I'm sure everyone is aware of Kanye West's track record with cancelled albums.
I mean, we all know the drill by now. He announces an album, we get some teasers on social media, maybe even a release date, and then we get nothing. The man probably has some of the most famous cases of scrapped or lost albums in musical history, with certain albums being as infamous as his official releases. However, it wasn't just his albums that got lost during production. In fact, there's a plethora of lost and scrapped media alongside the infamous unreleased albums that have been discovered over the 20 years of Kanye's career. There are TV shows, clothing lines and more, all under Kanye's name, that never fully made it into the public eye. Some of these things we simply never got and have very little knowledge on, while others have extensive histories that could be considered to be pretty common knowledge. From Yandhi to forgotten video games, here is a comprehensive history of the lost media of Kanye West. Alligator Boots. Alligator Boots is perhaps one of the weirdest pieces of scrapped Kanye media out there, with it being much less famous than Kanye's long list of scrapped musical content. Alligator Boots was a sketch comedy show which used felt puppets that greatly resembled the style of the ones featured on The Muppet Show, which the show was evidently very inspired by, at least in terms of aesthetics. The pilot of the show was even filmed in the Jim Henson studio lot, showing how important this inspiration was to the project. Kanye and fellow rapper Rhymefest were the masterminds of the project, and comedy writer Jordan Peele was even weirdly a part of the creative team. However, as I'm sure you've already guessed by the title of this video, the show simply never came to be. All that remains of the show is a couple of behind-the-scenes screenshots of the pilot in which we can see what the puppets looked like, alongside Kanye in a Stormtrooper outfit and Kim Kardashian in a Princess Leia outfit, from what is presumably some sort of Star Wars sketch in the show. A few clips from the pilot can also be found online, and a short behind-the-scenes documentary can also be found on both Vimeo and YouTube. From what little of the show we have access to, we can see that the show would have had very adult humour, with a lot of the skits present having very sexual jokes in them. These clips on YouTube also show us what the theme song sounded like, and if you listen to it, you can definitely tell this was during the graduation era, simply by listening to the synth on the track.
Now let's start the show!
Come on everybody, this the place to go. Now let the lights, cameras and action roll.
The show also interestingly has an IMDb page, with a rating of only 3.4 out of 10 stars. The page is very sparse, however, due to so little of the show being produced and released. Interestingly enough, the show has been attributed to have caused the first full connection between Kanye and Kim Kardashian, as he was reportedly determined to have her appear on the show. Apart from the few clips and screenshots, the show is completely lost as no episodes were produced after the pilot. As to why it was scrapped, we don't really have an answer. However, it is likely there was little passion behind the project to keep it going, and the project was also probably deemed too weird of a concept to continue to be made. Why this show existed at all, I have no idea. It's definitely a strange concept for Kanye to be so heavily involved in, but I think it would have certainly been interesting to have seen more episodes been produced. HBO comedy show. 2007 also saw the inception of another comedy show featuring Kanye, this time in the form of a Curb Your Enthusiasm style sitcom meant to appear on HBO. Larry Charles, a writer and director for Seinfeld, was even brought on for the project. The pilot sees Kanye having to meet a quote make-a-wish child in hospital, but he finds himself worried about his bad breath, so wears a zip-up hoodie over his face to cover it. We know that this show never made it past its pilot because Kanye was allegedly not pulling in all the laughs despite it being his show, as rising comedian Wyatt Cenac was found to be delivering the funniest lines instead. The pilot was also reportedly twice as long than it was supposed to be. A 2-minute clip from the pilot can actually be found on YouTube, but from what I can tell that is the only thing available from the show that the public has access to at least. The clip shows the aforementioned scene in which Kanye tries to talk to someone on the phone through his zipped up hoodie while visiting this sick kid in hospital. If I'm going to be honest, I can see why this show didn't go anywhere. From the short clip on YouTube, the show seems like it wouldn't have been very funny, and overall it's just a strange project and concept as a whole. Pastel clothing line. Before dominating the world of streetwear with Yeezys, Kanye had another clothes line in development called Pastel. Sunglasses seem to be an incredibly key focus of the brand, although it also included everything from jackets to t-shirts with a variety of prints and designs present on all of them. From concept drawings and what seem to be fully finished items of clothing available in promo pictures, we can see the clothes would have been very colourful, which fits in with the bright Technicolor theme Kanye was going for around this time, which we can see on the cover of Graduation. There is an incredibly well documented and detailed history of the story of Pastel, but it is so detailed that if I explained it all in this video, we would be here forever, so I will link the complex article in the description so you can read up on the very informative history of this elusive piece of Kanye Lost Media. To sum it up, Kanye had approached a team of unknown and incredibly well-known designers to help with the brand, had an office set up, conceptual designs finished, and an entire collection actually completed. However, the garments were never rolled out and so never made it to market, officially making them scrapped content. God Unwilling and Child Rebel Soldier. That's right, we're finally at a classic unreleased Kanye album, as well as a disbanded supergroup. This is technically also a Lupe Fiasco and Pharrell Williams piece of scrap content, as these two were also a part of the supergroup Child Rebel Soldier, which also has a pretty interesting history. The group formed during the recording of Graduation in 2007. The group's album, God Unwilling, was then essentially in the air for at least a couple of years, as Lupe Fiasco announced there would be a Child Rebel Soldier album releasing in 2010 with this title. Unfortunately, Fiasco later announced that the album had been shelved, and when he was asked about the album, he simply responded with, quote, "Nope." The album had no real further mention by any of the members after this, showing that it was likely dead in the water. The group itself actually had a couple of brief mentions after this, as on October 8, 2010, Kanye released a song called Don't Stop, which was believed to be a new Child Rebel Soldier song. However, Lupe Fiasco stated in an interview that the song was written in 2008, immediately debunking the theory it was a new song. At the screening for Kanye's Runaway short film in 2010, he announced that Child Rebel Soldier was back on the table after he released My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Nothing came of this, and the group was actually officially ended on July 25th, 2013 by Lupe Fiasco through Twitter. The group has 2 released singles alongside a guest appearance on Nerd's Everyone Knows remix in 2008. Apart from this, however, the group has absolutely nothing to its name, with God Unwilling being seemingly scrapped and presumably massively unfinished, if anything was produced for the album at all. 60 Minutes episode. There isn't too much to say on this one, but it is worth a mention as it has a funny interaction between Kanye and an interviewer, which has actually become a sort of meme in the Kanye community. I believe this interview actually debuted around 2004, but the only available clip on YouTube was released in 2007, so I'm going to put it here. Essentially, an entire 60 minutes documentary episode dedicated to Kanye has been lost, with this one clip emerging online, which features Kanye having to explain what a quote dope-ass beat is to the interviewer.
A dope-ass beat, you know, you could put it with...
A which beat?
A dope-ass beat.
I know what that is.
That's like a really good track.
Okay.
However, apart from this incredibly low-quality clip, the episode has been lost entirely, and no other portions can be found anywhere online. Good Ass Job. The history of Good Ass Job actually spans across all of Kanye's career, with its first mention interestingly being before the release of College Dropout. In 2003, Kanye detailed the names of his next 3 albums after College Dropout, with these being Late Registration, Graduation and Good Ass Job. Presumably this would be the finale of the Bear saga, with the idea being Kanye drops out of college in The College Dropout, goes back to school in late registration, graduates in graduation, and then gets a good-ass job. In 2006, a Today.com article said that Good Ass Job was still planned to release after the release of Graduation. It seems that the album would likely be released in 2008, however, tragedy struck Kanye's life. In November 2007, Kanye lost his mother Donda West to a failed plastic surgery. This same year, he also faced a messy breakup with his girlfriend Alexis Pfeiffer. It's clear that this was a very dark time in Kanye's life, which seemingly resulted in the concept of Good Ass Job being scrapped. Instead, he released 808s and Heartbreak on November 24, 2008. Another allusion to the album's title actually occurred in 2016 during Chance the Rapper's verse on Ultralight Beam from Life of Pablo. And then, in 2018, the album was announced via Chance's Twitter, which would be the last we heard of Good Ass Job at the time of recording. This is another super interesting one due to the history behind it and how we would have definitely got this album had such unfortunate events not taken place in Kanye's life at this time. It is incredibly unlikely that we will ever see this album, and it's difficult to tell how much was actually completed, if any of it was, due to its shaky and long history. We have no indication that tracks were recorded or even written, but it is likely that some were produced in some manner. Fame Kills Tour. The Fame Kills Tour was a planned tour that would feature both Kanye West and Lady Gaga, with the tour supposedly running from November 10th, 2009 to January 24th, 2010. But, as you guessed, it didn't happen. So, what happened? Well, 2009 saw the infamous VMAs incident in which Kanye famously interrupted Taylor Swift's acceptance speech to praise Beyoncé's video instead.
Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
This led many to believe that the bad attention Kanye was receiving for his behaviour at the VMAs resulted in the cancellation of this tour. However, other theories have been proposed as to why it was cancelled. Poor ticket sales alongside disagreements between the two artists' management teams have all been cited as potential reasons for the cancellation. The tour itself was actually incredibly ambitious, with the idea being that the two artists would be on opposite sides of the stage, perform their songs from their solo careers, and then perform several duets throughout the show. The idea was supposedly for Kanye to represent fame, while Gaga would represent humble beginnings, and the show would follow the two fighting for what the other represented, presumably through both visuals and music, giving the tour a very distinct theme. A promotional video does actually exist, which features a 30-second clip of Gaga being carried away by a man, which is presumably Kanye. However, this was the only promotional material produced for the tour, and this is also lost from the internet, as it was likely blacklisted from being shown after the tour never went ahead. Runaway MTV interview. 2010 is a pretty dry year in terms of Kanye's Lost Media. Despite this though, there is a very notable example, as there is a seemingly completely lost MTV interview Kanye did with Sway shortly after the premiere of his Runaway short film. There isn't too much to say on this piece of media, as from what I can tell it is lost entirely and the history behind it isn't very well known. The interesting thing, however, is that multiple GIFs exist that were taken directly from this interview, despite the interview itself not being online. The Reddit user I Don't Believe I'm on Fire, who made the post about this interview, also provided a JPEG image from it, showing that incredibly sparse bits of it do actually exist. The Reddit post also provided us with multiple links that used to have the interview, but it has been noted that these have since been taken down or deleted. There are no real leads to find this interview, with the only option left really being the MTV vaults or somewhere downloaded online, as this would explain the multitude of GIFs that have come from it despite it being missing. I imagine the whole interview is out there somewhere, but it's just simply never been uploaded to the internet in an official capacity, while unofficial uploads have been removed for copyright reasons. Never See Me Again. Unfortunately, the first unreleased song in this video is also probably the saddest Kanye has ever made. It is also probably the most mysterious in Kanye's unreleased discography, with multiple theories and stories being made about the song over the years since its release. I would like to warn people that this segment will feature the very dark themes of suicide and depression, so please skip past this bit if it will upset you. Never See Me Again leaked on October 23, 2010, just before the release of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. It was definitely recorded after the VMAs incident in 2009, but its exact recording is unknown. It's believed to have been recorded before Kanye exiled himself in Japan following this incident. There are essentially two theories surrounding this song and its background, with the first being that Kanye was planning on retiring music after facing all the backlash for this interruption, and the other, much darker theory, being that this song acted as an audible suicide note. The evidence behind the second theory was the sample used in the song being from Yukiko Okada's Futari Dake no Ceremony. I'm sorry if I butchered that. In case you don't know, Yukiko Okada was a young Japanese singer who famously took her own life by throwing herself off the 7th floor of the Japanese Sun Music Records building. Kanye coincidentally ended up in Japan after the recording of this song, making people believe he went there to imitate her death after experiencing a great feeling of isolation and depression by the reaction to his behaviour. However, it is very important to note that this is all just speculation and there is no strong evidence to support this theory as being true. It is based entirely off of the sample. The song is actually nearly 10 minutes long, with a repeated piano loop throughout, while Kanye mumbles through a low quality microphone on his own in the studio, clapping to himself halfway through the song. The lyrics talk about people wanting Kanye to, quote, hold his head in shame and that no one is going to see him anymore, which plays a huge role into the theory that he was planning to take his own life after this song. This song can't really count as having been lost, as the whole thing is very easily available to find on both YouTube and SoundCloud. However, I thought it was interesting because the song was never released on an album or as a single, presumably because it was too dark and Kanye felt it should not be released to the public. It's actually a very interesting song, and it would have been interesting to hear what it sounded like had it been fully and completely produced. However, at the same time I'm glad it never got released, as the background of the song is dark, no matter what theory you choose to believe. Thank God for Drugs. There isn't too much to say about Thank God for Drugs, as it isn't so much an album itself, but rather a lost name, if you will. Designer Joe Perez stated that Thank God for Drugs was actually just the original name for Yeezus, and was most likely just a working title and was not necessarily ever going to be the final title for the album. The album art was supposed to be pretty much exactly the same as the one we eventually got on Yeezus, but had the title Thank God for Drugs sprawled across it. Apart from that, there isn't much substance to this entry on the list, but I think it's interesting to mention nonetheless, as it gives us an insight into the creative workings of making an album. Watch the Throne 2. Watch the Throne 2 is another mysterious scrapped album by Kanye. There have been multiple allusions to Watch the Throne 2, with references to it dating all the way back to 2013. According to Vulture, Jay-Z said that the two, quote, spoke about dropping solo albums and then going back to do Watch the Throne 2. Producer Mike Dean, who co-produced Watch the Throne with Kanye, also said that he'd been signed up to do a sequel to Watch the Throne in 2013, but nothing seemed to come of this. In 2018, Kanye tweeted that, quote, Throne 2 was, quote, coming soon, but once again, nothing materialised. The final reference to this sequel was in 2021, when Mike Dean once again tweeted, quote, 2021, 10 years after the throne. However, as of recording, there has been no further mention of Watch the Throne 2's production or release. Whether the album was recorded at all or was just an idea thrown around, who knows? This is another example on this list that doesn't really have too much detail or information around it. And I think that's down to the fact that it didn't really have much substance, and like I said, was more just an idea than something that was actually going to happen at any point. However, I do think it is very interesting that it has been mentioned throughout so many years, and even as recently as 2021. Black Bruce Wayne. Okay, this song was likely going to appear on Yeezus 2, which I'll get to shortly, but I singled it out from any other unreleased songs that were supposed to be on albums because it has a very interesting and funny story behind it. Not too much is actually known about Black Bruce Wayne as a song, apart from the fact that a dedicated fan actually shelled out $500 to someone on the Kanye to the forum for a 32-second snippet of it. The verses that can be heard in the song are apparently real, but the beat is supposedly fake. To say, quote, "You think we would make something so bad production-wise? Get real." It was actually really hard to find anything on this. The only links I could find to this snippet all just led to some JPEG of a logo with 2021 The Return of the Real written underneath it. The snippet is seemingly entirely unavailable online, and little information is actually known about the origin of the track except the funny story surrounding it. Yeezus movie. The first movie on this list is also a completely lost or cancelled piece of media. The film was supposed to be a tour film which would have been directed by long-term Kanye collaborator Hype Williams, who had directed multiple music videos of Kanye's in the past. A trailer is actually available on YouTube, and it gives us a vague idea of what the film would have looked like. We can see the film would have mostly been shots of Kanye's impressive stage designs, and obviously the songs included in the tour, but it is also interestingly interspersed with footage of nature such as galloping horses and time-lapsed clouds moving in the skies. This gives the movie a much more avant-garde and arty feel as opposed to just a concert film, so it would have been very interesting to see this fully released. The movie was actually supposed to be released to select theatres, but as is the nature of this list, and as you've already guessed, it never made it to its release date. There is a quote Yeezus film available on Dailymotion, which was linked by Reddit user Yaconts in my search for this. However, going off of the camera angles, the sound quality and the mixing present in this video, it's definitely not the official Yeezus film. It seems like it's a compilation of fan recordings, or specifically this fan's recording of the Yeezus tour. I'll link it in the description so you can check it out, but it is most definitely not the actual movie, so don't get your hopes up. Yeezus 2 / Lost Yeezus Tapes. Another lost album, The Lost Yeezus Tapes, was supposedly a compilation album of sorts, which was made up of songs that never made it onto the final release of Yeezus in 2013. There is nothing else known about the album really, with its existence only being known because of a leaked contract document that featured the title Lost Yeezus Tapes. I think this is Yeezus 2. I've seen other reports that say Yeezus 2 was an actual recorded separate album, but from what I can tell these two are very closely linked and in my opinion are the same album. But I could be very wrong on this. So Help Me God. So Help Me God was actually the first of the albums / album titles that were eventually turned into Life of Pablo. The songs All Day, I Feel Like That, Can You Be, and Midas Touch were all reportedly to feature on So Help Me God. The album isn't so much lost as it was changed, as it slowly evolved into Life of Pablo over 2 years, and it was actually generally short-lived in terms of its original concept. The album art for this was actually officially released through Kanye's Twitter, with the title of the album also being mentioned. This album cover was eventually used as the single art for All Day, but was obviously ditched after this in favour of the Life of Pablo album art instead. Apart from this, there isn't too much to say on So Help Me God. It was simply an early name or version of Life of Pablo, with not much change between the two except the previous mentioned track list. Chirac. Chirac is arguably one of the least known scrapped Kanye albums in my opinion, with a pretty mysterious background as not much is known about the origin of it. The timing of the album syncs up with the Spike Lee comedy film of the same name, which makes it sound like this would have been the soundtrack for the film. If it wasn't intended to be the soundtrack, then it's certainly weird that it is the same name of the movie and was also in the concept stage in the exact same time period. According to Genius, a representative of Kanye revealed in May 2015 that Kanye was in talks to work on the film's soundtrack, but that he would definitely not appear in the film in an acting capacity. This seems to confirm that the two were coincided. However, we have no verification for this claim being true or not, so it's hard to definitively say. We also know that the artwork for Chirac was officially commissioned by Kanye, as confirmed by Joey Perez, who I mentioned also revealed the Thank God for Drugs cover art. The art is available on the Genius website, and from it we can see that it was another Yeezus-inspired cover, as it's another CD case. However, whether this album was actually supposed to be the soundtrack for the film or not is completely unknown. Rihanna album. After Kanye and Rihanna's collaboration on 4-5 Seconds in 2015, Kanye announced that he would be producing Rihanna's upcoming 8th album during a red carpet interview in 2015. Kanye did not end up producing the album, and we have no insight as to why. All we know is that he didn't and that other producers did instead. Nintendo game / only one mobile game. Okay, so I've put these two together as I'm pretty confident they're linked in some way due to the timing of them both and the fact that they're both related to a video game. Basically, President of Nintendo America Reggie met up with Kanye after Kanye specifically asked to meet him at E3 in 2016. Kanye then expressed an interest in developing a video game to Reggie, but Reggie ultimately politely declined for undisclosed reasons. No details were provided by Reggie or anyone there on the specific ideas Kanye had in mind for his gaming project, but it is theorized that it was the Only One game that he had in mind. Only One was supposed to be a mobile game that would have the player play as Kanye's late mother Donda West, and it would follow the player having to guide her through heaven. The game actually had a trailer release which is still available on YouTube. The animation in the trailer and the music used made the game look really promising, and perhaps even gives us a glimpse into what the game would have looked like in terms of art style. We actually have insight into what happened to this game, unlike a lot of other pieces of media on this list. The game was reportedly in a state of limbo after early development and was seemingly never touched after the summer of 2016. The members of the creative team have actually openly spoken about this game, and they have all admitted that Only One will no longer continue development, meaning we will definitely never see this game released. Cruel Winter, Good Music. After the success of Cruel Summer, Good Music in 2012, a sequel was reportedly in development around 2016. This album actually seems to have gone much further than other unreleased Kanye titles, as collaborator Sci-Hi the Prince said the album was, quote, really done. This not only confirmed its existence, but also the idea that the album was finished and probably ready for release, or, at least, it was so far into production that it was extremely close to being finished. The album would have likely followed the same idea of its predecessor, with multiple artists appearing on each track. Sci-Hi the Prince did also say that there was enough recorded to make a Cruel Autumn and Cruel Spring as well, implying that too many songs were actually created in these sessions and would have appeared on follow-up albums. Travis Scott also announced that he would be the executive producer of the album and assured fans that it would definitely be released in early 2017. And yeah, that didn't happen. So what did happen? Well, we don't actually know. Nothing happened in 2017 and there were no further updates provided after this. So this is kind of a mysterious release because it seemed to be nearly entirely finished, with a vague release date in sight, and then it just sort of never happened with no explanation provided by any of the collaborators on the album. However, it is a very interesting piece of lost and scrapped content, as we were so close to actually getting this. Swish/Waves. Swish was actually just a name change of So Help Me God, which, as I mentioned before, actually became Life of Pablo. This is also the same with Waves, which Kanye announced to be the name of his new album on Twitter,
before this was once again changed to The Life of Pablo. What's interesting is that the track listing for Waves is actually slightly different from the one we got on Life of Pablo. The album would have seemingly opened with a song called Nina Chop, which seems like an early version of Famous, and there's also a couple of songs missing such as Feedback and Low Lights. Another interesting detail we can see on the leaked tracklist for Waves is that it has a kind of act system, with acts 1, 2 and 3 being written next to certain songs on the album. Apart from this scrapped act system and a few songs changed or added, this album seems incredibly close to the final version of Life of Pablo. So once again, less of a lost album and more of an early version of an album we did eventually get. Wolves. Wolves was supposed to be a collab album between Drake and Kanye, which was teased as early as February 2015, when Kanye said a joint album with Drake might happen during a Hot 97 radio interview. Drake then assisted with the writing of a couple of songs on Life of Pablo in early 2016, before Kanye then appeared on Drake's single Pop Style, despite not appearing on the album version. This displayed that the two were working together at the time, and helped spark the rumours that the collab album was perhaps on its way. Kanye then appeared at the OVO Fest, where he asked the crowd, quote, "Are you ready for the album?" before disclosing he did not mean Views by Drake or Life of Pablo by himself, implying that the two were working on something together separate from their solo projects entirely. Then, in August 2016, a billboard appeared in LA that had, quote, "Calabasas is the new Abu Dhabi," with the logos of both Drake and Kanye's record label logos at the bottom. However, this album was actually officially cancelled in 2017 when Drake said, quote, "Everybody's got their own thing going on," and essentially said after this that he's done working with Kanye. Then, as we know, the two had a pretty substantial beef for a number of years and only properly reconciled recently, so it's unlikely that this album was ever going to be released. TurboGrafx 16. Probably one of the most famous scrapped Kanye albums, TurboGrafx 16 is one of the most unique Lost Kanye albums as well. If the album being named after a home video game console from the late 80s wasn't telling enough, then this album would have had a very distinct video game theme or influence. The album was first announced in the middle of one of Kanye's Twitter rants, where he said that, quote, "TurboGrafx 16 would be the name of his upcoming album." It then seemed like the album would have had many collaborators, with multiple social media posts showing other rappers such as Tyler the Creator, Quavo, Lil Yachty and Big Sean in the studio with Kanye during this time. Kid Cudi could also be seen in the studio with Kanye in a separate Instagram post, showing just how many collaborators were expected to feature on this album. A sort of tracklist was also discovered when producer Pete Rock uploaded a video on social media of him and Kanye in the studio, and people noticed a sheet of paper in the background of the post. The list did not have song titles, however, but had video game titles such as Sonic Colors, Silent Hill and Metroid Dread, alongside many more. It seems like these games were either going to be samples used in the tracks directly, or inspirations between the sound and feel of each song. Several tracks and tracklists have been leaked, and the video game influences are obvious, with synthesizers on certain tracks sounding like they came straight from Sonic 3. The sound of these leaked tracks are very interesting and are very different to what we've seen in the rest of Kanye's career, so this would have been a very, very interesting album had it made the light of day. The album was of course never released for no apparent reason, but as I mentioned before, there are plenty of leaked tracks available on YouTube that give us a very clear idea of what this album would have sounded like, but it is a real shame that we never got a studio release of this. Love Everyone. Another pretty famous example of a Lost Kanye album, Love Everyone has been considered to be an early version of his 2018 album Ye, and while the album was scrapped only a month before Ye, it has been stated that Love Everyone was incredibly different to Ye, with Kim Kardashian even stating that it was, quote, "a whole new album." This album gained a lot of traction when Kanye revealed the album cover would feature a picture of plastic surgeon Jan Adams, which was the surgeon who performed Donda West's last surgery. In the screenshotted text revealing both the title and cover art for the album, Kanye said, quote, "I want to forgive and stop hating," which suggests that the album would have been focused on forgiveness and letting go of hate to people who had wronged him in the past. This would link directly to the album cover being of the man who was probably held responsible for the death of Donda West. The album was entirely scrapped, however, after Kanye's controversial "Slavery Was a Choice" interview with TMZ. There was also a huge discrepancy over the proposed cover of the album, when Jan Adams himself posted an open letter to Kanye saying, quote, "Don't put my picture out there," and told Kanye to, quote, "cease and desist from using his image." The two did, however, agree to, quote, "sit down" and talk after this exchange on social media. Whether this sit down actually happened or not, I'm not sure. But either way, the album was once again scrapped, but is actually not an early version of Ye like certain people have suggested, but an entirely different Lost album instead. The album has been allegedly leaked on YouTube. However, I can't verify whether this is a real leak or just fan edits, which is a pretty common thing with these more recent Lost Kanye albums. Yandhi. Well, here we are, probably the main reason a lot of you are here. There's no argument against Yandhi being the most famous Lost Kanye album, with leaks and fan edits being made long after its initial announcement. So, what happened? The album was announced in September 2018, with an alleged release date of September 29th. Then, that fateful day came and there was no release or mention of the album until October 2nd, when Kanye announced completely out of left field that he would be travelling to Uganda to finish the album. The next release date was then provided by Kim Kardashian, who tweeted, quote, "November 23rd, Black Friday, Yandhi. Trust me, it is worth the wait." Once again, that day came and nothing was released, with the album being delayed indefinitely. The album then simply seemed to morph into Jesus is King, which we got in 2019. So how much do we actually know about Yandhi? Well, quite a lot, arguably a lot more than Kanye's other unreleased and lost albums. We know that Hurricane was supposed to be a track on the album, which we eventually got on Donda almost 3 years later, but it was a much different version, this one, than it was supposed to be on Yandhi. There was also a supposed tracklist released through the Twitter of the SNL performance, which gave us song titles such as Alien, Chakras, and We Got Love. The album also has a very interesting leak history, when it was mysteriously leaked through the iTunes ringtone store in September of 2019, with the song names matching all of the ones on the leaked SNL tracklist. Longer versions of these tracks were also uploaded to Spotify by a user called Yandhi Muck 10 around the same time as the ringtone leaks. As I mentioned before, the album was then scrapped in favour of the creation of Jesus is King, with most of the tracks on Yandhi being reworked into songs that we can now hear on Jesus is King. Yandhi also went viral due to its similarity to Yeezus in many ways. For example, the album cover is very similar to Yeezus, with it being a CD case, just this one is slightly different. And the similarity also becomes more apparent with the fact that the name is Kanye's name mixed with a historical figure. This is a super interesting entry just by how famous it became in Kanye fans, with some of them even still demanding that he releases it to this day, despite the fact the album has been entirely reworked, it seems. Kids See Ghost 2. In September 2019, Kid Cudi did an interview with Complex where he said, quote, "There will be more Kids See Ghosts albums. Kanye already told me he wants to start working on the second one." He even went on to say, quote, "There will definitely be more." However, apart from this interview, nothing else surrounding a Kids See Ghosts 2 has materialised since. It also sounds like the album didn't really have anything behind it, seemingly only being an idea thrown about between Cudi and Kanye. What we do know is the album would have been, quote, spiritual, as Cudi said Kanye said he specifically wanted to make a spiritual album in the future, and that Kids See Ghosts 2 would reflect this. But, like I said, this seems like merely an idea, with no signs of recording, album art, or even so much as lyrics having been produced for the album. Also, as we know, recently Cudi and Kanye have had a big fallout, and whether they reunite or not is kind of in the air. So whether we will actually get any future Kids See Ghosts projects is entirely unknown, and at the moment seems very unlikely for the near future, if at all. Sunday Service Beat. Okay, so there isn't actually too much to say on this, which I'm sure you're very sick of hearing, but I thought this was worth a mention because this gained quite a lot of traction on YouTube and has become a sort of meme since its upload. In February 2019, a video was posted by the YouTube channel Hip Hop Lookout, which showed Kanye with his Sunday Service group producing what the title of the video calls a dope beat. The video became a bit of a meme because of Kanye's interesting stance and dance at his keyboard, with people editing other meme music over the clip. It's worth mentioning as the beat being produced never surfaced again and is only available through this short clip despite it being a very fleshed out and cool beat. It would have been cool to see this used on a song, but it just never happened. Brothers. In the season 2 premiere of the drama series Tales in July 2019, we were teased with a new unreleased Kanye song. The song Brothers was played in the final moments of the episode, with a whole minute and a half of the song being played throughout the scene. Fans had a very positive reception of the track, with people then expecting Brothers to be released as a single shortly after its debut in Tales. However, you've definitely spotted the trend by now, and it never released as a single, or on any following album for that matter. There was never any release date provided in fairness, and the track was never really mentioned by Kanye at any point. It just sort of appeared on the episode of Tales, then got quite a lot of hype around it. It was not referenced by Kanye after the song played in the episode either. It did, however, get teased for a while via social media. The song seems to have started production in November 2017, when producer Irv Gotti posted a picture of him and Kanye together on Instagram with the caption, quote, "When two people like me and Kanye get together, hip-hop is about to get something enormous. Like, enormous." Followed by a cryptic quote, "Stay tuned." Then, in February 2018, Gotti made another Instagram post featuring Kanye with the caption, quote, "Me with 7, JJ, Kanye, Juan," and quote, "Stay tuned," again. However, this time there was a hashtag TS2 in the caption, presumably referencing Tales Season 2. Then finally, on May 19th of 2019, Gotti reposted the picture from late 2017 with Kanye, this time with the caption, quote, "Tales Season 2, July 2nd, once again hinting towards Kanye's involvement with the series. Judging by the fact the song was used in an actual airing episode of a TV show, it seems like it had entirely finished recording and production. Then, for some reason, it was just never officially released. It is available on YouTube, however, but it's still very, very odd that this never made it to release, as, like I said, it seems entirely finished and produced if it was used for a show. Jesus is King movie. That's right, there was a Jesus is King film that was not only produced, but actually saw release, unlike a lot of the other pieces of media in this video, even though its release was very brief. The film was confirmed to be a concert film, similar to the Yeezus film, and would feature a performance that was filmed in the summer of 2019 at the Rodin Crater in Arizona by Kanye's Sunday Service group. Kanye also distinctly expressed how this movie was not for entertainment, but to, quote, spread the gospel and, quote, to make believers. We know that the movie was directed by fashion photographer Nick Knight, which was announced in the trailer, which you can still find on YouTube. As for its release, well, previews were shown at the listening parties for the album in late September, and it was even released in IMAX cinemas on October 25th, 2019, the day the Jesus King album was released. A digital release was interestingly even teased in June 2020 by Kanye, but this never came to fruition and was never discussed again in the media. Metacritic and NME also provided reviews for the film, with the reception being that the film looked impressive in terms of cinematography, but ultimately failed in delivering its message and didn't know what it exactly wanted to be. We also have the track list for the film, but pretty much every song can be found on either Jesus is King or the Jesus is Born albums. But the versions are likely different because they're obviously live, so it would be interesting to hear. I guess this isn't technically lost, as the final cut will be available somewhere, but with no digital or home releases, there is simply no way to access it. What is interesting is that a short clip of the film is available through the Netflix Genius documentary, with the film being played on a large screen during episode 3 in the background. This is a very weird one, because the film was evidently completely finished and ready to release digitally after its initial IMAX release, but didn't for no disclosed reason. Perhaps it was the poor reviews of the film or general lack of interest in an evangelical concert film, but either way, the Jesus is King film never made it past its initial release date, and whether we will see it or not is completely in the air. Jesus is King 2. Another Kanye sequel album that never made it to release. Classic. Supposedly Jesus is King 2 would have been a remix album that would confirmedly feature Dr. Dre as producer. The album would have also possibly featured other rappers Consequence and Snoop Dogg, with Consequence confirming he was in Wyoming when asked about the recording, while Snoop Dogg shared footage of Dre and Kanye in the studio together, implying that he would have been directly involved. The album was announced on November 28, 2019 through Kanye's Twitter account, which featured a picture of him and Dr. Dre in the studio together. However, producer Dem Joints suggested that the album would never be released, claiming Kanye was interested in other projects. God's Country / Spirit Over the Horizon. The final entry to this video, God's Country and Spirit Over the Horizon. Unfortunately, you guessed it, there isn't much to these, as similar to Swish / Waves, these were early names and early versions for Donda. On May 5th, 2020, cinematographer Arthur Jaffa said he was working on a music video for a song on God's Country, which ultimately ended up being the Kanye and Travis Scott collaborative track, Washers in the Blood. It is believed that this would have been the first single for the album, but ended up just being a single on its own that did not end up on any album at all. The album's name was then ultimately changed to Donda in July 2020, and was then even renamed to Spirits Over the Horizon, before eventually being reversed back to Donda. We never got a full track list for either God's Country or Spirits Over the Horizon, as the songs Praise God and 24 were supposed to feature on them, and as we know, these ended up on Donda or the Donda Deluxe version. Well, thanks so much for watching. This is my first informative, documentary, whatever type video, and I really hope to do more in the future. This was really fun to make. Hopefully Kanye actually releases some of this stuff in the future. Maybe some of the songs or albums can go on an unreleased music compilation album or a playlist or something. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, it was really fun to make. So stay tuned for any more of these types of videos, and I'll see you all soon.